Started in 2 minutes. We're going to get started in 2 minutes. 1, 2, 3. One, two. One, two. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Raul Ortiz. I'm the Chief of the United States Border Patrol. I'd like to welcome everybody to Rio Grande Valley and our CBP Air Marine Hangar. On behalf of Secretary Mayorkas and the rest of the DHS team who we have assembled here, I want to thank you for attending this press conference. I will tell you that we've had a robust day. Secretary and I have had an opportunity to go out there and meet with our frontline officers, agents, and our workforce to ensure that we're prepared for May 23rd and beyond. So without further ado, let me introduce our Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas. Thank you, sir.
Thanks very much, Chief. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us. You know, this is my 10th trip to the border as the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the first thing that I want to express is how incredibly proud and honored I am to stand behind these individuals, members of the Department of Homeland Security, United States Border Patrol, Air and Marine Operations, Office of Field Operations, again, United States Border Patrol, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Enforcement and Removal Operations, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations. This represents what we are doing to address the challenge of the southwest border. We're bringing all of the resources, talent, and extraordinary commitment of the personnel of the Department of Homeland Security to bear. It is very important to note that while, of course, we are preparing for the end of Title 42, based on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's decision that it will end on May 23rd, that does not mean that the border is open beginning on May 23rd. We continue to enforce the laws of this country. We continue to remove individuals who do not qualify for relief under the laws of this country. A few weeks ago, I published, in response to questions with respect to the preparation and plans of the Department of Homeland Security with respect to the end of Title 42, I published details with respect to those plans, the preparation of which began in September of last year. We knew very well that the CDC's Title 42 authority would not be around forever, and it is our obligation, as well as the way we conduct ourselves, to be prepared for changes in the landscape, and that is indeed what we did beginning in September of 2021. And I outlined in a 20-page memorandum the 6 lines of effort, the 6 pillars of activity that undergird our plans once Title 42 goes away. And I should say that the elements of these plans are already underway, are already being implemented on an increasing level, given the level of migration that we are encountering on the southwest border. And let me outline the 6 pillars, the 6 lines of effort right now. First, we are surging resources to the southwest border: personnel, facility, medical resources, transportation. Second, we are improving the efficiency of our processing without compromising the security and integrity of our screening and vetting of individuals. Deciding and assessing how we can deliver greater efficiencies in the processing of our forms, the completion of forms that input information with respect to the backgrounds of the individuals whom we are encountering at the border. Third, we are elevating the enforcement consequences that we are bringing to bear to those individuals who do not qualify for relief. We are expanding the use of expedited removal, for example. We previously issued a regulation that empowers asylum officers in one of the agencies of the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, to make the ultimate adjudication decision, the ultimate judgment of whether an individual qualifies for asylum relief or not. Right now, until that regulation takes effect at the end of this month, right now, immigration judges who are suffering a $1.6 or $1.7 million, 1.6 or 1.7 million case workload and overwhelmed docket. Right now, they have exclusive jurisdiction. We are giving the asylum officers that jurisdiction. That is going to take what is now on average of a 6 to 8 year plus process between the time of encounter and the time of ultimate asylum adjudication to under a year. Those are 2 examples of the consequence regime that we will bring to bear, not to mention, of course, criminal prosecutions of individuals when the facts so warrant. 4, we are working on bolstering the capacity of non-governmental organizations and local jurisdictions to address the different challenges that increased migration bears upon them. They have been instrumental in our ability to address the challenges thus far. We recognize that with the end of Title 42, there very well may be an increased surge in migration, and we have to equip them with the resources and capabilities to address that increase as well. 5, we are disrupting and attacking the smuggling organizations and the transnational criminal organizations in an unprecedented way, at an unprecedented level, not just with the tremendous resources of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, whether it's Homeland Security investigations, Operation Sentinel, whether it's Blue Indigo, or so many of the different law enforcement efforts that we have, but also in close partnership with the Department of Justice and the other law enforcement agencies and departments across the federal enterprise, and with our partners to the south. And 6, we are addressing the challenge of irregular migration, not by ourselves, but with our partner countries. In the last several weeks, I have been to Costa Rica, and I have been to Panama, and I have spoken regularly with my counterpart in Mexico about what is a regional challenge. The increase in migration that the United States is experiencing is not exclusive to the United States. There are more than 1.8 million Venezuelans in Colombia right now. The population of Costa Rica is approximately 2% Nicaraguan, based on the movement of people from their countries of origin by reason of so many different factors: economic despair, violence, distress caused by natural disasters, all made more acute, all aggravated, of course, by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a multi-pronged approach to what is a very dynamic situation. We are addressing it across the Department of Homeland Security, across the federal government, with our state and local partners, and with our partners and allies south of our border. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
Good afternoon, Secretary Mayorkas. You have talked in the past about replacing Title 42 with Title 8. Could you explain to the public specifically how that would work, and what would be long-term ramifications, such as if someone tried to re-enter and they were dismissed on Title 8?
So I'm not sure everybody heard the question, that we are, with the end of Title 42, we will be expanding our use of Title 8. What does that mean? And I want to explain. And I'll try to be brief in this. But Title 42 is a public health authority that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention holds. And what that calls for is that because of the public health imperative in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, we do not process for removal individuals, but rather have the authority under the CDC's guise to expel them. So they do not have a removal, an immigration enforcement removal on their record. They are merely processed and turned around and repatriated to the country of origin. What we are doing, we are now using Title 8 in a number of different contexts, but what we will be doing is expanding that use. If Title 42, or when Title 42 is no longer something that we are able to use under the CDC's direction, then we will only use that immigration enforcement authority. Everyone should understand that when we release individuals who are not detained in our immigration custodial system, they are not merely released into the United States, but rather they are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings. And that is where they make their claims for relief under the laws of this country, make a claim for asylum. If they qualify, then they've established a basis to remain. If they don't, they are removed, and they have an enforcement record on the books.
Hi, Secretary. You mentioned that by the end of this month you expect to roll out the asylum overhaul.
I'm sorry,
rule.
it's a little hard to hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. That's better, and I'll repeat your question.
Okay, sure. So you mentioned that at the end of this month you expect to roll out the asylum overhaul rule. From what we understand, it will initially be implemented on a limited basis. When do you expect to be able to implement this asylum rule across the entire border? And where are you going to hold individuals when these screenings, the initial ones, are conducted? Are you setting up processing centers like they have in Europe?
So Camilo's question is, with the asylum officer rule that we are implementing at the end of the month, will we be implementing at full scale, or will it be a ramp-up process, and how will we actually implement that rule? So one thing that everyone has to understand is that the agency that administers the asylum officer rule is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And it is an agency that is funded primarily by the application fees that people pay to receive immigration benefits under our legal immigration system. And the law provides that that agency is to recalibrate the fees it charges every 2 years. Those fees have not been recalibrated for more than 6 or 7 years. And that agency was on the brink of bankruptcy. And that agency has been decimated. And we have been hiring additional asylum officers to be able to implement the asylum officer rule. And we will be upscaling the implementation over time and using it very efficiently to have the greatest impact on the immigration system. Because what we are talking about is delivering justice quickly, not compromising due process, but delivering asylum justice quickly. And what that means is if one qualifies, then that determination is made more rapidly than it has been in the past. And if one does not qualify, then that determination is made more rapidly than in the past, and a removal will promptly follow.
Hi, Secretary. You were asked several times today during your visit about, or it was suggested that ramp up prosecutions again at 1325 prosecutions that we've seen since the Bush administration under Operation Streamline and Richmond. Do you anticipate renewing that prosecution effort involving people else? What scale do you see that going back to?
So, Alicia, we do intend to bring criminal prosecutions when the facts so warrant. And we will be increasing the number of criminal prosecutions to meet the challenge, because the fact of the matter is there are more cases that warrant criminal prosecution than those cases that are being brought. And I want to say one very important thing. We're a nation of immigrants, and we are also a nation of laws. And we enforce the law, and we will continue to do so. And the decisions that we make in the enforcement context are based on the facts that are presented to us.
Secretary, a two-part question. One, how many migrants are we prepared to process every day should Title 42 lapse? And what is DHS going to do if that federal judge in Louisiana decides that Title 42 should remain in place?
So I'm going to take those in reverse chronology. If the district court makes a decision, the Department of Justice, as the legal representative of the executive branch, will assess what the next step should be based upon the judge's decision and the reason underlying underlying it. I'm sorry?
So you're following whatever the judge is going to decide in this case?
Well, it is our responsibility to abide by a court order, and the options that will be available to us will be determined by the Department of Justice, the legal representative. That is a legal analysis. And of course, it may depend on what particularly is the reasoning of the court underlying the decision that the court makes. And your second question, or your first question?
How many migrants?
So what we have done. So the question: how many migrants do we, are going to be processing a day? Let me turn again to these individuals here. I cannot overstate the talent, the commitment, and the dedication that these individuals and all of the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security whom they represent, what they embody. Because I will tell you that we are addressing a level of migration that is historic, and they are doing an extraordinary job in managing the current flow. As the plans that we published a few weeks ago evidence, what we have done is not necessarily predict the flow that we might encounter, but rather we have planned for different scenarios that could in fact materialize. Without predicting, it is our responsibility to prepare and plan for different possibilities, and that is what we have done.
Thank you. Just two questions, if you don't mind expanding on what ways the NGOs will be receiving assistance. I believe that was one of the pillars, I think, number 5. And the other question I have is if you could talk a little bit about what today meant, or what DHS means for today to mean to migrants who will be seeing this coverage.
So the second question, forgive me.
Oh, it's really just about messaging. What kind of message do you hope today's event sends out to migrants?
It's a very important message. We have articulated it before, and allow me to articulate it. Allow me to say it again. And I must say that as the temperature rises seasonally, we see the tragedy more of individuals placing their lives in the hands of smugglers who only seek to exploit them for profit. as the situation unfolds. Last week, we saw a tragedy in the maritime environment, not on land, but at sea, with a vessel of Haitians capsized and a number deceased. Do not place your lives in the hands of individuals who only seek to exploit your lives for the sake of profit. We are building safe, orderly, and humane pathways to access the benefits that the law provides and that Congress has passed. But traveling from one country to another in the hands of smugglers, only to be met by the enforcement authorities of the United States government, is not the way to achieve relief. The border, the laws of the border will be enforced. If one does not qualify for relief, one will be removed. The smugglers peddle misinformation. We see the misinformation that they peddle. That Title 42, for example, does not apply to certain populations. That information is false. You place your life savings in the hands of exploitative individuals. You put your lives at risk based on the misinformation that they peddle to you, only for you to be expelled or only for you to be removed under the laws. If you have a claim for relief, of course the laws provide that that relief will prevail. But so many do not qualify and so many are harmed en route.
How enforce Mexico decide the border with the government?
So if I understood your question, if I heard it correctly, how are we working with Mexico? In very, very close partnership. I spoke with my counterpart, actually the Foreign Secretary, Secretary Ebrard, within the last 2 weeks, and the Department of Homeland Security team was down in Mexico just a few days ago. Our relationship is very close. The cooperation from a law enforcement perspective is seamless. We have mirrored patrols. We are sharing information. We are bringing their interdiction capabilities to bear where it is appropriate. They are surging their resources based on our shared understanding of the movement of people and the conduct of the cartels. We have brought prosecutions. We have achieved extradition of criminal leaders. We are working hand in glove with our partners to the south, and we're extraordinarily grateful for their partnership. And I should say that not only are we working very closely with them in the enforcement arena, but we are also collaborating with them at an unprecedented level to achieve the promise of economic prosperity and economic development between our largest trading partner and the United States. The President's infrastructure bill calls for an unprecedented investment in funds to modernize, for example, our ports of entry. These are remarkable opportunities for these two countries to really use the ports as an engine of prosperity for this community and for others similarly situated.
If you have time for one more,
Mr. Secretary, Texas is doing their own efforts as well to protect the border, with Texas military, DHS troopers, and busing migrants to Washington, D.C. What's your take on that? Are there any coordination efforts between both DHS and the Texas state?
So did everybody hear that question? What is our coordination effort with the state of Texas? Today I met with law enforcement leaders, civic leaders, prosecutors, and of course our tremendous personnel in the Department of Homeland Security. Cooperation with state and local officials, whether it's Texas or other states along the border, has been long-standing, has been historic, and we're grateful for that cooperation and that partnership. But let me emphasize the word cooperation and coordination and collaboration. Those are essential elements of effective enforcement of laws, whether they be laws of relief, of humanitarian relief, or laws of accountability. We saw the result of an uncoordinated, uncollaborative effort in the screening of trucks that had an incredibly adverse impact on the economy here in McAllen and elsewhere along the border, and I heard that loud and clear earlier today from local officials. But we also saw where the coordinated, collaborative work can have an effective impact on our work when we were on the river here, and we saw their boats patrolling, and it became a force multiplier. We also saw force multiplication extraordinarily ably in watching how we use technology as well as our personnel on the ground to gain visibility of what is going on along the border and to respond accordingly.
Secretary, administration officials have said that the Biden administration is continuing the COVID-19 public health emergency beyond July 15th. Does that change plans with Title 42? And really quickly on Buffalo, what would you tell the victims' families about the role of government to prevent racially motivated violence, which you've labeled a threat to the homeland? And what is the right balance for DHS to identify problematic votes and not intrude on people's rights?
Two questions. One with respect to COVID-19 and how long it will be in effect. And we are required to defer to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They have made a decision that Title 42's effectiveness will end as of May 23rd, and we will act accordingly. With respect to the tragic events in Buffalo this past Saturday, and I've articulated to local leaders, I've expressed to local leaders in Buffalo that day and since, and I've expressed to national leaders our profound sorrow and the fact that our hearts break with the families and loved ones of the victims of that tragic hate crime that cost 10 lives and victimized others. And I think it's very important, Priscilla, that I communicate very quickly that in the world of targeted violence, when one community is targeted, we're all targeted. That is the fundamental value and principle of this country. Domestic violent extremism is one of the greatest terrorism-related threats that we face in the homeland. And we play a very important role. We understand, of course, the fundamental First Amendment right of free speech, and that individuals can espouse an ideology no matter how hateful it might be. But we in the Department of Homeland Security become involved when those expressions of hate, when false narratives or conspiracy theories propagated on social media or other online platforms, when they have a connectivity to violence, when they threaten the security of the homeland, that is when we get involved. And we have a number of measures already well underway, and we're building on them. First, we share information with state and local, tribal and territorial partners so they understand the threat landscape and can be prepared to prevent a threat from materializing and actually becoming another tragic event. We also have grant funds that we distribute to different jurisdictions. Those are two very important ways. Throughout the government, I'm speaking of two efforts that the Department of Homeland Security has underway. Throughout the federal government, there are many other efforts underway. The Department of Education has digital literacy programs to make sure that our youth are not vulnerable to calls of violence, that understand how to identify streams that are trying to coax them into descending down a path of violence. So we have many different efforts underway across the federal government, and we partner with the Department of Education. We, of course, partner with the Department of Justice. We partner with the Department of Health and Human Services. I will say that we have to remind ourselves that the tragic events of Saturday in Buffalo, New York, do not reflect a new threat, a new challenge. This has been a threat and a challenge that has been increasing in gravity and frequency. And when I first took office in February of last year, I articulated quite clearly the threat that domestic violent extremism poses, and through our information bulletins and alerts, we have continued to communicate to the American public the threat that this poses. It is not only the threat of an ideology of hate, but it is the threat of that hate and its connectivity to violence.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah,